Okay, so let's move on now to what we call horizontal work packages and also this new transfer component. So we can tell you a bit more about those. First of all, management, so our work package number 2. Of course, we understand that you need some time and you need to learn that you actually that your project proposal was successful and you will get the funds. So you can only then sit together with all your partners to really work in details on your procedures, your management structures, documentation, all the elements. However, management of projects is generally a complicated aspect, and management of projects that are innovative is even more complex. So we really would like to see how you approach this aspect to make sure that what you are thinking about is clear, appropriate, also for the size and needs of your partnership. So from the management perspective, your experimentation is in safe hands because you have well-designed processes and procedures, and you reflected in advance on how actually structured everything around delivering your innovative solution. So the management structures are supporting this. So please try to provide us with well-elaborated activities and the descriptions of those. Also, you can go beyond the predefined ones in the application form, so you can add more there. Try to clearly define the roles, the composition of the management, the meeting frequency, some procedures, what are the procedures around decision-making process, everything that will prove that your management structures are effective enough to successfully deliver your innovative solution. Of course, we are interested in looking into your project management and coordination, both on strategic and operational level. So we are interested in learning which kind of bodies you are planning to design. It's important to us to see clear responsibilities. So we are coming back to the composition of your partners, that you have all the relevant actors around the table and they have clear responsibilities. So the work is organized between all the involved partners, and we know who's doing what and how much money they have for that, etc. Try to give us some details about your day-to-day coordination so we can imagine how you will be managing on a daily basis your project. And maybe some ideas around tools you will be using, some organizational arrangements, everything that will help us in understanding better your approach. And of course, we are interested in learning, in seeing that you demonstrate that you have sufficient human resources allocated for this day-to-day management. And as well, risk and quality management approach is very important, especially you have a dedicated section, risk sections. We will come back to it where we would like you to elaborate on potential risks. And again, because we are experimenting here, don't be afraid to honestly list your risk. It's really about proving that you take them into account, you will work on them, but because we are innovating here, we are experimenting, we are piloting new solutions. So in principle, all projects are risky. Don't be scared, don't try to hide something. Have a good risk analysis. Monitoring and evaluation is strongly linked to what I mentioned already at the beginning of our presentation. So again, for those of you familiar with EUI, predecessor initiative, you probably noticed that this time around we have even a separate work package dedicated to monitoring and evaluation. So this is clearly showing how monitoring and evaluation is important to us. And just to give you a bit of a logic behind it, we want to capitalize on your project outcomes, on your achievements. We want to inspire other cities in Europe. We want them to be able to get inspired or even to replicate your ideas. But in order to do that, we need to be able to understand what worked, what didn't. So we need to have a good monitoring throughout the project implementation and a good evaluation at the end, so that our experimentation is well summarized and the results of it can be used in the future by you, but also by other urban actors, can inspire cohesion policy mainstream programs. So that's why the monitoring and evaluation work package is here as a separate work package, and that's why we are so much emphasizing this aspect. So again, try to be specific, try to describe your activities well. You can propose some extra additions to what is already predefined in the application form. And in terms of timeline, make sure that your data collection starts already during the project implementation and lasts until you find it sufficient, but it's not left until the very last moment. And also, you probably noticed that your final evaluation, and I had a sneak peek into Slido questions, so maybe I can already try to cover this last bullet point together with the question. So indeed, you probably noticed that there is another change between UIA and EUI. So this time, our duration of the implementation phase in total is 3.5 years, but we want your experimentation, so thematic work packages, to finish the latest at the end of these 3 years. So the last 6 months are left for evaluating, summarizing, capitalizing, working with transfer partners. So wrapping up your piloting phase in a way that will allow us to properly close your experimentation with lessons learned for the future and everything related to scaling up transferability based on a good quality evaluation. Another horizontal work package is dedicated to communication and mentioned already capitalization. And again, there are some predefined activities. You can also add some details yourself, going a bit beyond what is already predefined. So what's really important is that your communication activities are treated by you as a supporting tool for project implementation. So you're not simply showcasing, but there are these clear interrelations and integration between the communication activities and implementation activities. So also don't hesitate to show us this link in the application form. Make these links clearly black on white so we know which communication activity is related to which implementation activity, so we see it as a whole nice concept, holistic approach. So cross-references to and from thematic implementation work package, very important. Also, demonstrating efforts for a tailored reach out and engagement is important. So we see that your activities were tailored, channeled, and appropriate for different target groups that you are thinking about. And also make sure that your target groups are specific. So don't talk about urban actors, but try to be a bit more specific. Are there specialists in this area or that area? Are you addressing your activities to your whole population, or maybe only to some specific groups? And if you have different groups, then try to analyze your channel, your communication channels, if they are appropriately well tailored to the needs and specificity of different target groups. Try also to make these target groups quantified and specific, so we also know and understand a bit more if we are talking about big groups, smaller groups, so we better understand your communication activities versus the targeted groups. And try to set clear and ambitious communication objectives. So try to go a bit beyond just this generic awareness raising or changing behavior. Try to be a bit more specific and try to be linked with the specific content of your project proposal. And finally, the last horizontal work package is the brand new one, the brand new component, transfer component. So as you probably noticed, you see some elements of the application form related to transfer in different sections of this application form. So in section B, we would like you to demonstrate that at least main urban authority or one of the delivery partners has experience in this international transfer networking activities. So there is someone experienced in that and will be instrumental for facilitating your activities around cooperation with the transfer partners. So demonstrate that you have someone who has experience in doing that. In section C, we want you basically to answer two questions: who and what. Who, meaning identify areas that could benefit from replicating the solution. If you don't have transfer partners yet identified, and again, let me link myself here with questions that were asked on Slido. In principle, it's not mandatory, it's not obligatory, and your project will not be rejected if you don't have yet your transfer partners' names and surnames of the city identified. But we encourage you to do that. And of course, if you want to score absolute maximum points on this particular criterion, having a full answer with transfer partners identified, with a clear rationale why you identified them, what was your process, why this particular group of city, that will definitely give you a chance to score maximum points. But not having them will not lead to rejection of your proposal. So it's not, in principle, it's not mandatory. So if you don't have them yet, explain to us how you will identify them. And if you have them, it's not enough to just list the names of the city, but also explain the motivations and rationale behind selecting this particular group. Equally important question is also what. So which elements of the solution you think that can be transferable? And try to be more specific. Don't tell us that generally your project is transferable. Your project will be very big. Which elements you think that are transferable, and also what will be the conditions or resources that other cities interested in your solutions should take into account. Try to give us some ideas that we already see that you're reflecting on your transferability from the very, very beginning. And finally, in section D, we ask you to also give us this opening general introduction to your transfer work package. At the application stage, indeed, generally this work package is frozen. So you will work on this with your transfer partners at a bit later stage. So we only ask you to do a summary, but try to be specific in the summary. Try to integrate also your link with transfer components in other elements of your work plan. So we see the cross-references. We see that it's not just a separate part of your application form, not linked to what you're actually doing locally, but there are these cross-references, there are these links developed. And of course, the transfer should be led by the main urban authority or dedicated delivery partner that will be responsible for implementation, facilitation of the activities, but the entire partnership is encouraged and welcome to take part in cooperation with transfer partners. So for all the partners, it will be a meaningful experience. And that's the end of this section. So I guess we can look into Slido.
So yes, we have a little poll for you. We've mentioned it, but it is also a question that people have been asking since the very start of this online Q&A. So is the identification of transfer partners compulsory at the application stage? So you can vote and select one of the three answers. So there is, yes, the three transfer partners must be reflected in the AF. At least one transfer partner must be identified in the AF, or ideally transfer partners are identified, but if not, it should be explained how they will be identified. So you can, and last answer, no, the transfer component is entirely optional. But people are giving the right answer, which is that yes, ideally transfer partners are identified, but if not, it should be explained how they will be identified and what type of urban areas are relevant for the projects, which is what Agnieszka was mentioning. So yes, as I mentioned, we have a lot of questions around this transfer component, which is normal because it is very It is new for EUI and it didn't exist for UIA. So maybe we can start with the first one, quite generic. So can an urban authority be involved as a main urban authority, meaning as the lead partner of your project in one proposal, and also as a transfer city in another proposal? And I think this comes from this rule that we have that one city can only be financed once in a call. So I'll give the floor to my colleagues.
Yes, thank you for this question. Indeed, it's a question frequently asked. So we have a rule that one urban authority can be financed only once under one call, which means that I will give a bit broader answer to explain the whole concept behind it. So in principle, you as a city, you cannot be a main urban authority in one project proposal, but an associated urban authority in another project proposal. You also can't submit two projects as a main urban authority. So that's an important eligibility rule. The same eligibility rule applies also to transfer partner. However, here we are at the application stage, we are a bit more flexible because we understand that sometimes it's challenging. For example, transfer partners are talking with different urban authorities. Not necessarily these urban authorities, main urban authorities, know that their transfer partner is, for example, also talking with another city. So at the application stage, in principle, we do allow that you can, as a city, we can imagine that you submit a project proposal as a main urban authority, but at the same time, you will agree to be someone's transfer partner for another project. However, if you will be very lucky and actually both these projects will be selected, we will come to you and we will tell you that you can select only one. So or you need to resign from being someone's transfer partners, or you need to resign from having your project as a main urban authority. So we will a bit clean this at the what we call initiation phase. So at the end, the rule will be applicable that one city can be financed under one call only once.
Thank you, Agnieszka. We also had a question that I was initially keeping for the end, but now because we dive into this topic a bit more, maybe it's time to address it. So if a city got a project finance in the first EUI call, can it still apply to this call because the topics are different? So could you confirm this?
Yes. The general rule of EUI is that one city cannot be financed twice under same topic. So because the topic of the first EUI call was New European Bauhaus, and the topics of these calls are something else, greening cities, sustainable tourism, and harnessing talents, yes, you can apply also for this call. But if in the future, European Commission will propose one more time greening cities topic, and you will be already selected under this topic, under this call, then you will not be allowed to apply and be financed once more under same topic. But if these are different topics, you are allowed to apply and to receive funding multiple times during one programming period.
Thank you very much. So back on transfer now. Should each transfer partner meet the requirement of having a population above 50,000 inhabitants?
Thank you for this question. No, these requirements related to 50,000 is not applicable for transfer partners. So transfer partners can be really different sizes, and we also encourage you to look into the composition of the transfer partners in a really broad way. So it will be a nice, diverse group. So smaller cities, bigger cities. We also oblige you to look for cities from less developed regions, but there is no minimum or maximum size of the city.
So regarding the transfer work package, people have noticed that in the application form, there are some sections that are frozen. So where should they indicate the transfer partner is if they already have them? And should they already present a signed confirmation or a signed partnership agreement at application stage?
Thank you for the question. So we would like you to identify your transfer partner or the logic behind selecting them, and In section C, I'm actually having the application form open, so maybe I will be able to quickly tell you which exactly box in the application form that is. So this whole exercise should be done in section C.4.5 and C.4.6. So there you will elaborate on transferability of the main elements of the proposed solution, as well as on identification of transfer partners. So section C. And you need to, Kat, remind me about the second part of the question.
It was about if they need to present some sort of formal document, like a signed partnership agreement or a signed commitment letter at the application stage.
Very good question. Thank you. No, we do not require that. You do not have to prove to us or show us or attach to the application form any letter of intent, any partnership agreement. That will be obligatory, naturally, but at the later stage, at the initiation stage. So in the application form, we are just expecting you to give us a narrative explaining your level of preparation regarding transfer partnership, but you don't have to attach any documentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we can now take one regarding the timeline of the project. So you've mentioned it that there is a specific timeline for horizontal work packages and thematic ones. So could you confirm what is the timeline for the implementation? How long does a project last? And what is the timeline of the horizontal work packages?
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course, with pleasure. And let me invite you first maybe to also have a look into our EUI Innovative Actions Guidance document. At page 19 and 20, if I well remember, you have project phases described. So you can have a look there. There is also a graphical presentation, so it might be easier to understand that. In principle, implementation phase is 3.5 years. And then you have some differences within this implementation period. So thematic work packages should end the latest 3 years after 3 years, so half a year before the end of project implementation. All the horizontal, what we call horizontal work packages, so what we were explaining around management, communication capitalization, transfer and monitoring and evaluation, they last throughout the whole this whole period, so 3.5 years. And then there is also another difference with work package transfer, because we give you this flexibility when you want to start cooperating with your transfer partners. You don't have to start already day one of project implementation, but you have to start the latest 1 year after the start date of your project. So it's up to you, together with your transfer partners, when you decide that is your starting point, but then you continue the cooperation until the very end of the project implementation. So beyond the end date of your experimentation, so you can then, as we already discussed, capitalize, evaluate, summarize, see, reflect more on transferability of your solution.
Thank you very much. We have one regarding the project management aspect of the project. So the human resources allocated to the project for more specific activities, should they be identified at the time of the application submission, or can they be hired at a later stage?
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. I can take this one. So at the application stage, you don't have to have already identified or recruit your project management team. What is interesting, however, for us is to understand what will be more or less the quantified involvement of the key person in your project. So we need to know, for instance, in the work package management, if you plan to hire a full-time project manager, a part-time finance manager, and so on. You have also in the staff cost description the possibility to include the full-time equivalent involvement of the different people involved in your project. So that's more what we are looking for at the application stage, to know actually what will be the quantified involvement for us to be able to assess whether or not you have considered sufficient resources for the implementation of your project. But the recruitment of the key staff for your project could be done at a later stage.
Just maybe another question going back to transfer. Can a transfer partner be in the same country as the main urban authority?
No. Our key requirement is that transfer partners are coming from other member states. So main urban authority and transfer partners each needs to come from different member states, and this is an obligatory requirement.
Thank you. And when we were talking about that a main urban authority can only be funded once in the framework of the one call, does this also apply to delivery partners?
No, this does not apply to delivery partners. This is a requirement only applicable to the city, so to the main urban authorities and associated urban authorities.
Thanks for confirming this. I think we can take one last question on this whole horizontal aspect. Could you provide an example of a capitalization activity and an example of a transfer activity so that people can understand the difference?
Yes. So let's start maybe with an example of a capitalization activity. Let's imagine that under the topic greening cities, you're working on biodiversity. So you can, for example, organize a conference, a workshop dedicated for other EU urban authorities who are also struggling or working on biodiversity, to meet together, to exchange the ideas, to showcase what you're working on, and to work together with other, but not necessarily urban authorities. You can also invite other urban actors, experts, and any other actors who are involved or interested in this solution. So it's a way to spread the message around your achievements, around what you're working on, but also all the lessons learned, because as we are experimenting, there is this saying from NASA program that failure is not an option. For us, failure is an option because it's part of experimenting. So if you have some lessons learned, you know what didn't work, that's also worth sharing with others. So that can be an example of a dissemination activity. And an example of transfer activity, you can find a lot of examples actually also in our EUI guidance. There is a separate chapter, chapter 5, in this document dedicated to transfer component. So we are proposing you, and we will also be training you during the initiation phase how to effectively shape transfer partnerships. So we will be supporting you in making sure that this element of your project is well designed and really meaningful. But you already in this chapter, you can find some ideas that we are talking here about site visits. We are talking here about online exchanges, different kind of workshops, some peer review activities maybe between you and your transfer partners. But also maybe you would like to invite your transfer partners to do some sort of a job shadowing of what you develop and how you develop it. So really the palette is very, very, very broad. But we are talking about this kind of activities. Maybe additional comment is that transfer partners, naturally, you probably already noticed that they have budget allocated for them. And there are also certain activities that we propose to them, but in a way also expect that they will be doing also their homework back at home. So some transfer activities are also activities that transfer are doing back at home. So they can work on some, they can prepare some expertise, they can if budget allows and if there is a reason for that, they can run some small pilot experimentations. So there is a really broad scope of what transfer can cover.
Thank you very much. I like the little NASA quote. We'll take just one last question on transfer and then we'll move on to budget and finance topics. So you know how main urban authorities, they have to have a specific criteria in terms of urbanization level, and they need to be 1 or 2. Does this also apply to transfer partners, or they can be in the level 3 of urbanization according to Eurostat's statistics?
Thank you for this very important question. Indeed, transfer partners are cities. So we are indeed looking into the GURBA Code 1 or 2, because the GURBA Code 3 are rural areas. So indeed, transfer cities, they need to meet the GURBA Code 1 or 2 level.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's all for now on these topics. I'll give the floor back to you.
Thank you very much.